Welcome to the Emergency Management and Preparedness Inclusion of Persons with Disabilities webinar series. I'm Lewis Krause from the Pacific ADA Center, your moderator for this series. This series of webinars is brought to you by the Pacific ADA Center on behalf of the ADA National Network. The ADA National Network is made up of 10 regional centers that are federally funded to provide training, technical assistance, and other information as needed on the Americans with Disabilities Act. You can reach your regional ADA center by dialing 1-800-949-4232. Real-time captioning is provided for this webinar. The caption screen can be accessed by choosing the CC icon in the meeting control bar. To toggle the meeting control bar on, you press the Alt key once. If you want it permanently on, press it the Alt key a second time. As always in our sessions, only the speakers will have audio. The audio for today's webinar is being broadcast through your computer. Make sure your speakers are turned on, your headphones are plugged in. You can adjust the sound by navigating to the audio settings on the bottom panel. You can adjust the sound by sliding the soundbar left or right in the audio tab. If you do not have sound capabilities on your phone or prefer to listen by phone, if you do not have sound capabilities in your computer and prefer to listen by phone, dial 1-669-900-9128 or 1-646-558-8656 and use the webinar ID 155-545-130. Do note that the webinar is being recorded and can be accessed on the adapresentations.org website in the archive section next week. This is the 7th year of this webinar series, which shares issues and promising practices in emergency management, inclusive of people with disabilities and others with access and functional needs. The series topics cover emergency preparedness and disaster response, recovery and mitigation, as well as accessibility and reasonable accommodation issues under the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, the ADA, and other relevant laws. Upcoming sessions are available at adapresentations.org under the Schedule tab in the Emergency Management section. These monthly webinars occur on the second Thursday of the month at 2:30 Eastern, 1:30 Central, 12:30 Mountain, and 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And by being here, you are on the list to receive notices for future webinars in this series. Those notices go out 2 weeks before the next webinar and open that webinar to registration. You can follow along on the webinar platform with the slides. If you are not using the webinar platform, you can download a copy of today's PowerPoint presentation at adapresentations.org in the Schedule section. At the conclusion of today's presentation, there will be an opportunity for everyone to ask questions. You may submit your questions using the chat area within the webinar platform. The speakers and I will address them at the end of the session, so feel free to submit them as they come to your mind during the presentation. You may type and submit your questions in the chat box area as indicated on the screen, or press Alt-H if you're using the keyboard and enter text in the chat area. If you are listening by phone and not logged into the webinar, you may ask your questions by emailing them to adatech@adapacific.org. That's adatech@adapacific.org. If you experience any technical difficulties during the webinar, you can send a private chat message to the host by typing in the chat window you would search for Pacific ADA Center and send that message. Type your comment in the text box and enter. And if you're using keyboard, again, use Alt-H to access the chat box and then use the keyboard keys. You can also email us at adatech@adapacific.org or call us at 510-285-5600. Today's ADA National Network Learning Session is titled Using the California Power Safety Power Outages for Inclusive Emergency Planning. This webinar will focus on the 2019 California Public Safety Power Shutoffs, the PSPS, including stories from the community, barriers experienced, coordination across public and private agencies, and effective strategies that could become best practices. Working together as individuals to build a resilient community that keeps each other safe, aware, engaged, and informed is part of how we need to plan for the future. We're going to hear how the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers, CFILC, and other independent living centers are partnering with other stakeholders across the state to support people with disabilities and older adults during different types of disasters. Today's speakers are Christina Mills. She's the Executive Director of the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers. She has over 20 years of experience as a professional in the disability rights field and has been working closely with stakeholders to develop strategies for individuals with disabilities, access and functional needs to maintain their independence and quality of life during diverse disasters. Our organizations have also been at the forefront of coordinating on the ground durable medical equipment and assistive technology support for those who have been displaced during a disaster. Anna Acton, the Executive Director of Freed Independent Living Center, is also joining us. Anna has over 15 years of experience in providing direct services and leadership for independent living community-based services in California. Freed Center for Independent Living provides a wide range of services to people with disability living in Nevada, Yuba, Sutter, Colusa, and Sierra counties in California. I will now turn it over to the two of you, Christina and Anna. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Louis, and thanks to the Pacific ADA Center for putting on these series of webinars. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. I know this is a very important topic for many of you. Here we are looking ahead and looking into our next fire season and the potential of additional public safety power shutoff events happening in the state of California at least. So we'll go on to the next slide. So thank you, Louis. You did a great job introducing me. My name is Anna Acton. I'm the Executive Director at Freed, serving Nevada, Sierra, Yuba, Sutter, and Colusa counties. We are an independent living center, and I'm going to go a little bit more into what that means. Just as background a little bit on me, I have been working at Freed for some years now, have some experience working on the state level around disability issues, and live in Nevada County in a rural part of Northern California in the Sierra Nevada foothills. Next slide. So during my presentation, we're going to cover what Freed is and other independent living centers here in California. I'm also going to talk about the Aging and Disability Resource Connection initiatives here in Nevada County. I'm going to talk about the 2019 California Public Safety Power Shutoff timeline and what we experienced in 2019. We're going to talk a little bit about stories from the community, the things we heard, the things we saw, and how we work to address those. I'm going to go over what worked for us in Nevada County and parts of Yuba County around the PSPS or Public Safety Power Shutoff events, and then some of the barriers we experience, the areas of improvement that we need to address moving forward. And then I'll touch on some effective strategies for us all to consider, some best practices for you in your local communities. And then lastly, I'll be talking about the Lease Lives campaign partnership that we actually have with Pacific ADA Center and other local community partners. Next slide. So Freed is an independent living center. We serve people of all ages, from youth to older adults and everywhere in between. We serve people regardless of the type of disability that they have. And we serve people again and living in those 5 counties, Nevada, Sierra, Yuba, Sutter, and Calusa. Freed is, as an independent living center, operates from a peer-delivered, person-centered model of services to support self-determination of people with disabilities. We have a motto in the disability rights and independent living movement that's nothing about us without us. And this has a picture here of a painting of a hand with those words on the palm. And we really believe that people with disabilities are the experts in their own lives. And we really work with, in a very individualized way with people to understand what their specific and situation is, what is most important to them, what their strengths are, and then we work alongside them in partnership to help them meet their goals, and with a focus on supporting people to live in the community with the services and supports that they need, and help empower them with the knowledge and advocacy tools that they need to be able to get their needs met. If you want to know where your local independent living center is in California, you can look it up and type in a zip code or city, and at cfilc.org/find-ilc. And you will learn more about that from Christina later in today's webinar. Next slide. So as an independent living center, Freed is one of 28 independent living centers in the state of California. So wherever you are in California, there's an independent living center that serves your community. We also have centers for independent living throughout the nation in every state. So to be considered an independent living center or a center for independent living, we have to do a variety of different things, including specific core services that we provide. We have to provide services that are peer delivered. We have to have a majority of our staff and board members be people with significant disabilities. And we have to provide services through the independent living philosophy and through a peer and person-centered model. So federally, we have certain core services we have to provide. And then in the state of California, we have additional core services. Those include independent living skills training, basically working off the premise that we do a lot of skills transfer. The idea that, you give a person a fish they eat for a day, you teach a person a fish they can eat for a lifetime. We provide individual and systems advocacy, so helping people understand what their rights are on an individual level, but also working on systemic issues such as disaster preparedness and response and recovery to ensure that the needs of people with disabilities are being met in those systems. We provide peer counseling, both individual and in group settings. We provide information and referral, so we get people connected to the resources that they need, that they want, and that they can benefit from. And then we do transition services, and that really is broken down into 3 areas. Nursing home transition, so institutional to community living. We also work on diversion services, helping divert people from going into higher levels of care or institutions, and keep people living in their homes in the community where they want to live. We also do youth transition, so helping people transition from youth into post-secondary life, work and play. We also do housing assistance, helping support people to find and maintain housing. Personal assistance services, helping people get their personal attendant care needs met and connecting them with personal attendants and being able to manage those personal attendant services to get their personal needs met. We also provide assistive technology services. So we have an equipment reuse program that many of us do throughout the state, or we have device lending libraries where you can check out or borrow a device, kind of a try before you buy type program. Next slide, please. I also wanted to touch on the Aging and Disability Resource Connection of Nevada County. ADRCs is how we like to refer to them. I know we're full of acronyms in this world. So we, around the ADRC, we actually in California have just designated ADRCs throughout the state, and then have a number of additional communities, counties that are working on developing an ADRC. The goal of an ADRC is to streamline access to long-term services and supports, and it's really a collaboration. And the collaboration in California has to be between an independent living center like Freed, as well as an agency on aging. In our case, it's Agency on Aging Area 4, and other providers of long-term services and supports and safety net services. The services and supports are based on individual needs and are available regardless of the individual's age, income, or disability. The idea is that there are many different service providers in our communities that are providing services, and we can work collaboratively to ensure, regardless of where an individual enters the long-term service and support and safety net system, that they get connected to the services that they need and that they are eligible for. It is a no wrong door type of system, leveraging those organizations and those collaborations so people get what they need. Oftentimes people, when they're looking for disability or aging related services, they've maybe never had to reach out for support before. They don't know where to start. They know what they want or what they need, but they don't necessarily know how to get there. And so we work collaboratively to address those needs. And there's 4 core services related to it: enhanced information and assistance, short-term service coordination to deal with more crisis or urgent needs, and then the long-term planning for person-centered counseling, options counseling, to help people plan for their long-term service and support needs, and then those transition supports, both where kind of those major life transition supports around hospital discharge or around transitioning from nursing homes. Next slide, please. So I wanted to start a little bit with just going over what Freed's role has been in emergency response over the last few years. I would say Freed is almost 30 years old, and this is something that we have done throughout the history of our organization. In my personal experience being with Freed, it really kind of came together a few years back. There was the Oroville Dam spillway incident in Butte County, and there were many communities that we serve affected by evacuation orders, one of the largest evacuations in state history. And so it really came to a head where we realized that this was really a critical role that we could play both in planning, response, and recovery from disasters. And then of course, we've had multiple large wildfires over the last few years that have again honed kind of our services and our response and our collaboration around local disasters. So on an ongoing basis, Freed works with our local offices of emergency services on emergency planning and sheltering needs. We provide information to consumers on personal preparedness, helping people develop their own personal plan given their circumstances of what they're going to do if there is a flood in, say, the Yuba and Sutter communities, or if there's a wildfire like we've been experiencing throughout multiple of our counties. We sign up consumers for notification and alert systems to help them be better informed and make sure that they are connected to their local code red or whatever that notification system is. And we participate in statewide advocacy regarding access and functional needs around disasters. We also work to identify individuals who are at risk due to power shutoffs. Leading up and during a disaster, we also call consumers in our database. We have thousands of individuals in our database, and we can we will call consumers in our database that are in impacted areas. For example, during the Oroville spillway incident, potential flooding, during wildfires, and during public safety power shutoff events, we will quickly identify individuals in those areas and reach out directly to them to provide assistance. We work with consumers who have lost assistive technology and help them with replacement of those items. This happens a lot around wildfires, whether it was our wind complex series of wildfires throughout the state throughout 2018, we had 2019, the Butte County fire, the Camp Fire. This is a major issue for people that they evacuate, maybe without their equipment, and we can help them with replacement. We often suspend normal intake processes during emergencies. So when a disaster takes place in our local area, we are quickly organizing our staff off of maybe their typical duties and helping organize them in response to the community need. We embed a staff person in our county operations center. We have done this in multiple counties during multiple different incidents where we become a go-to for access and functional needs issues and help the county with their response during those wildfires or potential flooding. We also visit shelters to provide support to individuals and provide technical assistance to sheltering to ensure people's needs are met while they're sheltering and have been displaced from their homes. Next slide. So public power shutoff de-energization, I have a hard time saying that word, or public safety power shutoffs. So we're really going to go into what we experienced in October 2019. PG&E executed 5 PSPS events in Freed's catchment area just in the month of October. And again, we're located in that northern Sierra Nevada foothills area, and the PSPS events were activated due to elevated wildfire risks. And what we have seen, just similar to other disasters, is that people with disabilities are disproportionately impacted during disasters and during PSPS type events. We have people with disabilities and older adults who rely on power for life-sustaining measures or for independent living. So a PSPS event is maybe an inconvenience for some people in the community, but for people who rely on that power for the durable medical equipment and assistive technology, it really puts them in a kind of a crisis situation. And that's exactly what we found in October 2019. We know that in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada here, we do have power outages periodically, but these are very different than a PSPS event like we experienced in 2019. Power outages in our community often are due to a snowstorm. It may be isolated to just a particular part of the community. And often it does not extend for multiple days. Rarely, once in a while, it might be 3 or 4 days. But again, it's limited to a certain area of the county, not the entire county. And often it doesn't extend more than a couple hours or a day. But with the PSPS events, we saw a very different situation that really put a burden on the community and on individuals and how to get their needs met during multiple days of power shutoff. Next slide. PSPS timeline. So just to kind of give you a little overview of what I'm talking about here, in September 2019, we did have one PSPS event, and it was really actually a blessing for us to have that event. It was a couple-day event, but it was very limited in scope to our area. So it allowed us to really reach out to people in that area and really develop some systems and best practices that would really come in handy in October. right? So these were just a couple counties that were impacted in certain parts of the county. So it's not as expansive of an event as we saw in October. So then going into October, like I said, there was 5 events, and I wanted to kind of go over these a little bit with you. There's the first event was, there's actually was 6 events in October. The first event though was just Yuba County. It wasn't Nevada County, and it was really more limited in scope. And then we went into events that happened October 9th through 10th. And this was about 36,000 people impacted during this power shutoff. We had 11 healthcare facilities who lost power. These included assisted living, nursing homes, hospital, and clinics. The next event, October 23rd through 24th, was about 42,000 customers in Nevada County. And it really expanded more statewide. So that's where we saw about 189,000 customers affected statewide. And an interesting thing happened here for Nevada County. After approximately 2 hours of de-energization, PG&E initiated a backup generator system that powered areas of our downtown grid. And this was really an important step because during the October 9th through 12th event, power outages throughout the entire county. The downtown areas didn't have power. We saw 2-hour waits for people at gas stations. We saw people having to try to go to Roseville to get ice to refrigerate their critical medical prescriptions. And it was really widespread. But then when this October 23rd through 24th event happened, PG&E brought in this backup generator and was able to power the downtown grid, which was really kind of a game changer for the community because it powered some of the critical kind of and created basic access to services such as food and fuel and hospital and those kind of things. Then we went into another event that basically many people did not get power back on between the October 23rd event and the October 26th event. We had extreme fire danger. We had approximately 42,000 people in Nevada County without power. And then the statewide impact was even much larger. I think about close to 1 million customers in 33 counties did not have power during this October 26th event. And then we went, before power could even be restored completely in Nevada County, we went into our next event, October 29th. It was smaller scale, statewide with only 430,000 customers affected, but we had a similar number of people affected in Nevada County. And again, we've been now through multiple PSPS events and some individuals have not regained power through these multiple events. And we had complete re-energization by October 31st in Nevada County. Next slide, please. So during this event, we had, there were 7 to 8 days where some individuals within our community did not have power. And I want to share with you just some of the stories we heard during this event. It was really interesting because at the beginning of the public safety shutoff events and in the first few days, we didn't hear as much from people almost. It was as if, oh, this is only going to last a couple days and I should be able to kind of get my needs met. But as the event continued over consecutive days and into a week for some people, the desperation and the needs started to kind of compound for people. We had consumers calling us saying, I only have 6 hours left on my oxygen tank. And in order to conserve my oxygen, I'm going to lay down on my bed and not move so that I don't use more oxygen than I need to. We heard individuals saying multiple individuals saying they were dialing down their oxygen levels to try to conserve their oxygen during the time. We had a consumer someone who contacted us and said that they had an oxygen concentrator with a battery that only lasted 4 hours. They contacted us after mid-October in the second, third event. And I asked him, I said, well, what did you do during the last PSPS event? Because he was saying, I really need a place where I need power. I need a place where I can just rest, where I can plug in, and I don't have to worry about recharging my oxygen concentrator. And I said, what did you do during the last event? He said, I drove around every 4 hours to try to find power. I'm on SSI, I'm out of money. It's the end of the month, and I don't have any more money for fuel. So we were able to put him in a hotel. We had multiple people who used CPAP machines who came to us, and one person in particular stands out to me. She was so exhausted when she came into our office, and she was so tired. She said she needed a place with power so that she could sleep. She explained to me that when she sleeps, and she falls asleep, she stops breathing once per minute. And so she had not slept in a few days and was absolutely exhausted at that point. We also, those were some of the stories that we heard from individuals, and then we quickly started working to address those needs. So next slide. So I'm going to give a quick overview of the type of things that we did during the 2019 October PSPS events. Nevada County is a community of about 90,000 people with a wide expanse of land, very rural in nature. We received 198 incoming calls. 80 individuals were served with either backup battery charging stations, hotel stays, or gift cards for gasoline or food. We made 18 hotel arrangements for a total of 67 nights, because again, there was multiple days where some people had their power out for 7 days, even 8 days in some cases in some of the really rural areas. We transported 6 individuals to hotels because they lacked transportation themselves. We provided 24 people with gasoline for generators. So what we found is that some people did have backup generators, but it got really expensive. And again, people are on limited income. They may have a generator at the end of the month. They're on SSI and they don't have any money for their gas for their generator. And I could even relate. I was without power for, I think, 6 days in my home. And we ran a generator, a propane generator, and it cost us about $500 in propane to run our generator during that time, which was a significant cost that most people can't afford. We distributed 49 backup battery charging stations that I'm going to go into more. We, after that first October PSPS, where the power was out to the whole area, and then PG&E brought up that backup generator, our office was kept power, which meant that we could be a charging station for people. So we charged 26 devices at our office, and 9 people came in multiple different days with multiple devices to charge, whether it was a power wheelchair or mainly oxygen devices, as well as their laptops or phones. We had to purchase hotspots in order to continue working while the power was out. We had gone to a VoIP system, so the power being, even though the power actually came back on in our office, the internet was not working. So there was not sufficient power to those utilities to keep the Comcast, for example, on to our area for our phones and our internet to use hotspots. We incurred about 24 hours of overtime of staff trying to address the needs of people in the community. And then we kind of developed our own emergency operations center where we had designated staff for doing intakes, for arranging hotels and transportations, for distributing batteries. And then we also worked with volunteers for moving those batteries and dropping them off at people's homes. And then we had to do extensive follow-up with people while they had the batteries during the PSPS events, including home visits to ensure that they could utilize those backup battery charging stations effectively. Next slide. Okay, so this is a picture of the Goal Zero Yeti 3000 lithium portable power station. So these devices are 3,000 watt hours, and they work really well for people who have CPAP machines, BiPAP, part-time oxygen. We found they did not work well for people who had high levels of oxygen concentration that they needed 24/7. They would just not last long enough to power those type of devices. They worked well for power chairs. They also worked well for inflatable mattresses, for those kind of devices. So most people require daytime charging of these batteries at either community resource centers that PG&E set up or at locations such as Freed. So it's something to consider with these is that they're only going to last so long depending on how much wattage the device you're plugging into uses. And so for some people it worked really well, and others who really had high levels of power needs with higher wattage, it's not the best solution. So we would really direct those people to the hotel stays. It did work well for people who had backup generators, because those backup generators, again, running them 24/7 is expensive. There's also maintenance issues. Your generator worked well one day and then the next day it doesn't want to start. It needs maintenance. And so we noticed some people who had those backup generators, gas generators, along with these batteries was a good combo. And then they also require a certain comfort level with technology, right? And people needed support for troubleshooting it. It's kind of a techie piece. So for those that are kind of our techie consumers, they really got a lot out of them. We had one person who used a ventilator, a power wheelchair, and was able to basically use two of these, kind of a techie guy, really could manage it well, and it was able to actually get through multiple days of power outages with the two backup batteries, someone with very significant disability. And just, they can take up to 25 hours if they fully are depleted to recharge. So that becomes a little bit of a barrier on multiple days of outages. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what worked? So Christina's going to go more into this in depth with her presentation, but this was really, we did some very quick coordination with PG&E of resources on the fly at the 11th hour. You know, Christina will talk a little bit more about the contract with PG&E, but at this time we had no contract. We had relationships with PG&E. Some individuals at PG&E, and we quickly identified that there was a need, there was going to be multiple power outages, and what could we do? Literally, we're organizing Friday before a major power outage statewide that was going to happen on Saturday. So in some respects, it worked really well that we were able to quickly be nimble and organize. It also was a challenge, I'll go into that later, but it worked well. We had multiple days. We were calling each other daily. PG&E was ordering batteries and having them shipped to independent living centers. They put together an account with debit cards that we could tap into to pay for those hotels, for transportation, for food vouchers for people. We were able to get those backup generators from PG&E in downtown Grass Valley. Again, I want to stress that that was a life changer for our organizing and for our communities. The downtown grid and those essential services remain powered on. And it meant that people didn't have to drive literally an hour and a half to get ice, right? We could put people in hotels within their community so they could go home and feed their cats and dogs and not have to transport them an hour and a half away to Sacramento where there was power. We were able to, it really made everything work a lot better. We didn't have those long waits at gas stations, and people were able to go and get food at the local grocery stores. It was still hard, but it was better. And then the community resource centers expanded from 1 to 3. So these are the ones set up by PG&E. These there was 1, and as they identified a need for more, they were able to get 3 just in Nevada County. Next slide. So what worked? Pre-screening. So we pre-screened consumers before the major PSPS events in October. And that helped us kind of assess the community needs. So that September PSPS was critical. This year, 2020, I feel like we're going to be in a much better situation because we know what PSPS events are. We are pre-screening people today, now, so that we can identify who needs who a battery would work well for, who's going to need to go to a hotel, organizing with those hotels ahead of time and transportation providers. The pre-screening is really helpful. I also want to say, just a shout out to our county, the messaging to community partners was great, and to the public. There was a lot of communication, daily reports from the county, both public health and the Office of Emergency Services, to our community partners that made us be able to coordinate services. We did marketing and outreach. The Department of Health and Human Services outreached around PSPS and local resources such as independent living centers. We also had PG&E outreaching, as well as other community partners. We also, our county did a great job with just messaging in general, whether it was with local media or with their Facebook. We had reliable go-to places to direct our staff and community members to get really good, accurate, up-to-date information. And Freed was considered a critical resource, and this was really important in how we collaborated and were able to provide services, right? Because the county was saying, hey, you're a critical resource. We were on the grid when PG&E brought up in the big backup generator to power the downtown grid, which kept our power on, and that really helped us in our capacity to deliver. We forwarded free calls to our managers, had our cell phones. We were taking calls basically 24/7 for people who needed assistance, and we had hotspots to address those. We also provided follow-up calls to consumers who got batteries to improve their usability around technology. This is for those that were not comfortable with technology. It took a lot more follow-up. We did home visits, making sure things were connected correctly, making sure that they understood how to operate it. We gave easy-to-use instructions to people, so that the backup batteries can be used kind of on a basic level. But if you can get more techie, then you can do things like turn it on and off with your Wi-Fi when you're away from your home. So those are nice, but there's some basic instructions and basic usage that was fairly easy for people to get, especially with some home visits or follow-up phone calls. Next slide. Our coordination with our Emergency Operations Center is a key piece. I really want to stress that without that coordination on the local level, we would be way less effective as an organization to respond effectively. We had our local 211 call center, 24/7, 7-day-a-week call center was embedded in our Emergency Operations Center that provided a direct feedback loop for emergency managers and for 211 getting the right information. We put together a shared database. So we were able to push out 211 as a place to call, and they did pre-screening for us. We gave them the pre-screening questions for the program that we had with PG&E, and we had a shared database. So they would get permission, they put the person on the shared database, we would check it 24/7, and then we'd follow up with people, get them that battery, get them a hotel, get them transportation. get them a food voucher, and then we were able to loop back with them and they could see the person got their needs met. We were able to really increase our capacity during this time to serve a larger population, and so did the food bank. I just want to give a shout out to the food bank. Did some amazing work, right? People had lost a lot of food during the power outages. It's the end of the month again, and so they were able to serve many more people, just as they're doing right now, I want to say, with COVID-19. And so we have that strong relationship already that existed before this event happened with our Office of Emergency Services and Public Health. So important to have that local level coordination. And then the county was really shooting out multiple emails to their community partners multiple times a day, keeping us engaged, giving us the most up-to-date information so that we could plan and we could share that with our community. Next slide. So we also worked with our homeless shelter and our hospital. And this was really, I think, a success. A lot of people were going to hospitals just for power needs and just to get connected to power. And so we have a relationship with the hospital. They referred everyone who had just gone to the hospital for needing power to us. By the time the next PSPS came around, those same people did not go to the hospital again. We got them into hotels, we got them backup battery, it reduced hospital readmissions. Next slide. So barriers, I'm gonna go over these quickly because I'm running out of time as usual. I'm usually long-winded. So barriers were the back-to-back PSPS events. Like I said, 7 to 8 days, some people had power. It was really difficult to stand up a new program like this in the middle of the PSPS. We also found that there was some major issues around access to oxygen supply for people, both in the community and in facilities like assisted living or nursing home facilities. At certain times, we only had a single pharmacy operating right in town. So people getting access to prescriptions was an issue. And then that inability to refrigerate medications. Next slide. The community resource centers that PG&E set up had limited hours and did not meet the needs for some of the people we were working with because they needed to be able to, plug in items for longer than maybe they were open. There was issues with privacy. So if someone had a CPAP machine or a nebulizer, for example, they would go there. We got feedback about wanting more privacy while they were using their nebulizer, for example, so they didn't feel like they were on display in the middle of this community resource center. They were also temporary tents. So really looking to more of a brick and mortar type of community resource center, I think would be a lot more comfortable for people. We had some organizations that ceased providing services during the PSPS events, and that really made it hard because they didn't have power. They weren't effectively able to serve the community. We also found that the re-energization created surges that damaged more sensitive medical equipment or household appliances. This was also true of gas generators. People were having issues with blowing up so to speak, their oxygen concentrators not operating because of the surges. And there were some issues with messaging with PG&E, right? Because everything's happening so quick. The power's going off, it's not going off, it's going to go off for this long, it's not going to go off. And then kind of over messaging almost, where we started getting feedback from people that they weren't even listening anymore because there was so much messaging and they didn't even know what to believe anymore. Next slide. So again, this really was a crisis for individuals on electricity that needed electricity for life-sustaining devices. And we had a lot of individuals with no plan. Literally, when we asked them what their plan was, they said, "My plan is to call call 911." And we had to say again and again, that's not a good plan. One, we're in the middle of fire season. So if your plan is to call 911 and then a major fire breaks out, right? And those ambulances or first responders are busy fighting fires, you're not going to get your needs met. We had dropping temperatures and the difficulty of people staying warm. And then the batteries in hotels did not meet everyone's needs, and the batteries being too technical. And a lot of that has to do with taking people out of their homes. People's homes usually are set up to accommodate them well. You take them and put them in a hotel, what about their personal attendant care? What about their assistive technology? What about their bed that at home is at the right height so they can transfer independently, but at a hotel, that might not be the case. Next slide. So a couple strategies I wanna highlight here. That coordination across both public and private agencies is critical. And really working with organizations that already interface with those with disabilities and older adults. So there are community providers, organizations that already have lists of people that already work with this population. The more you can engage them, the more effective you'll be in addressing those needs, and it will increase your capacity to do so. We have to be proactive in identifying people and outreaching and helping people plan. And we have to have very diverse solutions for things like public PSPS events. So whole house systems, for example, for backup power is going to be critical. We need organizations to work to build their capacity to work remotely, right? We're learning that through COVID-19, and to be able to, what are you going to do if you don't have access to power or phone? So thinking ahead and building your capacity to work in those more difficult situations. Next slide. So a few things around utilities to really look at developing mechanisms to keep power on to critical infrastructures. That backup, generator in the downtown grid was key. There are other strategies utilities can use to kind of limit the power outages. So instead of affecting the whole county, you're affecting just certain areas potentially, and kind of decreasing the impact zone of power PSPSs. And really improving communication. So utilities improving communication with community partners, right? So the Emergency Operations Center, the public health, the local organization coordination is key, but also ensuring the utilities are communicating directly with those community partners as well as with the counties, and is really critical for us to be able to be effective in addressing the needs. And then having community resource centers that are more expansive, that are overnight, that you can drop off the durable medical equipment in a safe manner and come back and pick it up so you don't have to stay there all day. That they're more brick and mortar, or they're in places that are ADA accessible, and that your kids can have a grassy place to go and play during the day while you're there. The privacy issues, and then the ability to charge multiple devices so that I can take my wheelchair and my backup charging station, my phone and my laptop, and get them charged at the same time. Next slide. So we are working with the Pacific ADA Center on the Listos California campaign. I know I'm out of time, so I'll just say there's 4 steps, and this is really about personal preparedness. Find your 5 trusted allies and share your plan is what we're working with people on. Prioritizing your health needs and creating lists, creating your emergency supplies kit, and then plan how and when to evacuate are some of the key pieces that we use for personal preparedness. And there's a website here, at listoscalifornia.org, and you can find more information on the Pacific ADA website. Next slide. So just to give you a sense of the campaign, Listos campaign in Nevada County with the Pacific ADA Center, we have FREED, we have our Nevada Sierra Connecting Point, which is our in-home supportive services regional public authority, and they do the 2-in-1 program. We have our Meals on Wheels provider. We have Neighborhood Center of the Arts. It's an arts day program for people with developmental and intellectual disabilities. We have our Sierra Foothills Village and the food bank. And that also gives you a sense that those are your local community partners that often, the types of partners that already are working with those with access and functional needs. Next slide. Okay, questions.
Okay, Anna, this is Lewis. I think we are in an unusual situation on this webinar this time. Anna has to actually leave here. So we're just going to take a very quick question because we want to make sure that we have enough time for Christina to ask to deal with her part of the presentation. So I'm just going to look at a couple of questions that came up that were, I think, related to you, and some of the other questions that I don't get to, we'll ask them of Christina. So there was one person who asked what worked for consumers that were not comfortable with the technology when you were talking about the Yetis.
Yeah, what was useful was really providing the one-on-one kind of hands-on support for those individuals. These were individuals who were often older, in their 80s or 90s, were some of the people we were working with. And, you know, so easy, simple to use instructions on how to use the backup battery charging station, the Yeti, was critical, going over that with them, but then following up with them with phone calls, as well as going and doing some home visits. Some people, we went to their homes multiple times just to check in and make sure things were working for them. That's what we found to be most useful.
Okay, another question. Actually, before you do that, let me just make it clear that even though Anna is talking about the Yeti in particular, you know, the Pacific ADA Center and the ADA National Network is not promoting any particular manufacturer. There may be other manufacturers that have devices that are similar. So one person asked if you could send her your pre-screening questions. Do you have those, Anna? And I can, if you want, before you go, go ahead and get her email out of the chat window. So,
Great. Do you want me to send that directly or to you,
yeah,
Lewis?
You can send it to her. Yeah, you can send it to her. Okay. I think you have your next meeting in 2 minutes, right? So I think we're going to let you go. Before we turn it over to Christina, thank you so much for a great presentation. Really, really thought it was fabulous. And there were things that people really need to understand here that were a model and exceptional, including getting herself on the Emergency Operations Center as an independent living center. If you're an independent living center or another disability organization, this is an excellent model for what you can try to achieve in your regional area, in your local area, is to get onto their Emergency Operations Center to help coordinate all the efforts that are being done. There's a question about copy of the PowerPoint. The PowerPoints are there on the website at adapresentations.org in the schedule page today in the emergency section. By tomorrow, it'll be in the archive section. All right, and with that, thank you so much, Anna, for that. And I'm going to turn it over to Christina. Christina.
Thank you, Lewis. This is Christina from the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers. I just want to thank Anna for her great presentation, as always, on what her local community has experienced and how her organization has both been a leader in these efforts around disaster, but has also been seen as an example for many around the state and across the country. Thank you. And to Gabriel at Pacific ADA, who's been assisting us in the technical stuff and preparing for this presentation today. Thank you all. So I'm going to quickly go over some of the things that I think some of you know about our organization, but do want to do just a quick brief recap history of what we are for those that are less familiar. Next slide. So our mission statement, we're a statewide organization. We work to increase access and equal opportunity for people with disabilities by building the capacity of independent living centers. Next slide. We are not an independent living center, and we are oftentimes confused as an independent living center. Instead, we're working to build the capacity of the centers to better serve their communities and local individuals. We also have a number of statewide programs that we are funded to provide. So Digital Access Project is our affordable internet program. Freedom Tech is our assistive technology alternative loan program, similarly to a personal loan at a bank, but specific to AT. Our DO Network, which is our community organizing hub for all of the independent living centers in the larger disability community. Ability Tools, which is the Assistive Technology Act program of the state of California that we refer to as Ability Tools program. And then our Youth Organizing Disabled and Proud program, which is all about organizing, connecting, and educating youth with disabilities across the state. In addition to building the capacity of independent living centers, we are also a membership organization that works on a lot of public policy. So the independent living centers like Anna's Freed Center for Independent Living have an opportunity annually to buy into being a member of CFILC and then get a vote on what public policy priorities our organization works on throughout that year or longer term. I want to stress that because a lot of people, while they don't understand the differences between what our organization does statewide versus a local independent living center, there's also been some historical confusion around what's the difference with membership. And really, it's the public policy piece. We are purposely housed in Sacramento near the Capitol so that we can be in and out of the building often, doing advocacy on a variety of different public policy topics. And then today I'm here to really, I'm very excited to talk about for the first time in a public way across the nation, our latest program that we launched a couple weeks ago, the Disability Disaster Access and Resources Program. Next slide. So again, just to be clear, we're not an independent living center, but what you should know too is that we are very unique in the way that the folks at the independent living centers, the directors that make up our membership are also my board members. So I have no other board members. The directors that pay to be members are my board members. And so if you'd like to see who our current membership is, I've left a link there. You're welcome to check it out. We do aim to have all 28 centers as members. Unfortunately, we don't have that capacity at this time, but we have increased over the last couple of years, which has been very exciting. Next slide. So how did we get here? A lot of people have been wondering, so you're partnering now with Pacific Gas and Electricity to provide some resources during a public safety power shutoff. And for years, prior to me taking over CFILC, our former executive director was very passionate about both disaster and healthcare advocacy. And it was really through her leadership that we have gotten to where we are now. So CFILC and our independent living centers very early on commissioned a few different after action disaster reports with June Kales, who wrote those reports, and you can find those on our website. You can also Google them. I think they will also come up that way, to really highlight to both government officials locally, statewide, and anybody in the community who cared about the disasters and how they were impacting people with disabilities, to really use those reports to create better policies and checklists and mechanisms and everything possible to make inclusive disaster strategies in the future while we continue to face disasters of all sorts as time moves on. So those reports are out there. Certainly we would love for people to use them. And I can tell you personally that last time I reviewed one of them, I said, oh my gosh, we could have written the same exact report again. June did a terrific job of writing those reports, and I think there's a lot that can still be gained from the information shared in that in terms of how we can do better. CFILC, again, we've also sponsored and supported or opposed legislation related to disasters, and of course have fostered lots of different relationships with policymakers on what might work or what might not work for our community when building inclusive disaster designs. Providing expert witness testimony, both again, on a county level, local level, and statewide, and also nationally. We host and participate in the Disability Disasters Coalition that I know some of you are a part of as well. Previously, it was known as the California Disaster Readiness Coalition. It's morphed into the California Disaster Strategies Coalition, which is seen more as sort of an arm or a chapter of the National Disaster Strategies Coalition. And then, like you heard Anna say, we really encourage and foster and help build independent living centers partnership between the regional and local Office of Emergency Services so that there can be coordination and planning on a local level. I always say to folks that I don't know your local communities, you know them best. There's some infrastructure and things that we can do statewide to help make that easier, but when it comes to your local communities, you are the experts on that, not the statewide folks. We've also worked over the years to get a number of our independent living center staff in place as functional assessment service team members, and some of them still exist, while some of them don't. It still is a great, although some disagree, a great mechanism to get people involved in the disaster world for folks with disabilities and access and functional needs. And then a number of us over the years have been doing virtual and on-site shelter accessibility support in making sure that shelters are not turning away people with disabilities because they might have a personal assistant or need a cot that's a little higher or need a sign language interpreter or need their medication refrigerated. There's all sorts of different things that come up that require some expertise at the shelter level. And then Anna mentioned this as well, but we have been fulfilling for many years the assistive technology and durable medical equipment needs for individuals that are displaced or quickly evacuated from their homes without their technology in place with them. So fortunately, as the assistive technology program of the state of California, we have the capacity to be able to provide a lot of that equipment. We have device lending demonstration centers across the state that have equipment available for a loan on a loan basis. And then we also have many independent living centers that provide reuse closets full of different AT and DME. And then, of course, there is never enough of us to sit on the number of advisory committees and boards that talk about disaster and all of the things that we need to be prepared for in a disaster that we could all be participating in. So your city council meetings, your planning committees, your county meetings, as well as regional and statewide. I mean, if there's anything that you get out of today, I really hope it's that you can get involved and cultivate the relationships that are needed to make sure that people with disabilities and older adults are represented at the table in the variety of different committees and councils out there. And then CFILC also established a few years ago the Richard DeVelder Disaster Relief Fund. Prior to that, we had absolutely no funding to do any disaster work that we had been doing. It was all in-kind support, both from CFILC and the independent living centers. And like I said, we were oftentimes using our loan closets to give away equipment, but sometimes had to turn people away if we ran out, and therefore couldn't replace something that prevented someone from going into a hospital, just simply because they didn't have their wheelchair when they were evacuated. The Richard DeVelder Disaster Relief Fund has taken in donations as small as $5, as large as $5,000, and is what we use to really help people get their needed AT and DME when we don't have it in our loan closets made available. And I'll just say one of the last things that we purchased with this fund is some sensory items for individuals in the Butte campfire area that lost, that had intellectual developmental disabilities and needed a weighted blanket, a weighted ball, and then another individual who lost his scooter. We replaced his scooter. And then another individual that I can think of off the top of my head who his service dog lost his jacket in the fire. So we've used the fund for all different kinds of AT and DME, and it's been wonderful. And then last year, we had some funding and we were able to ask all of the independent living centers if any of them were interested in becoming accessible charging stations to their community. And Anna talked about how the consumers in her area specifically took advantage of that last year. We did that because of the barriers we were seeing in the community, both in Southern California and Northern California, when it came to getting access to the community resource centers. And I know Southern California Edison calls them something a little different. A lot of folks were saying they weren't accessible to get to, or they weren't accessible once you got into the place. There were all sorts of barriers. So we found the funding and asked the centers, would you like to become a charging station that's accessible to folks in your community? And so we will have, you can find a list of accessible charging stations, which centers are participating in that effort through our website, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And now, officially, we have gone into our first funded program with Pacific Gas and Electricity support and our contract that is in effect this year. Next slide. So where did we start? A lot of people will say to us, you know, how did you know what the community's needs were? Some of you might be familiar with an event that we put on every year called the Disability Capital Action Day. We had worked in partnership with some of the folks at PG&E to determine what kind of survey questions we might want to ask the community to see if they are ready for a variety of different types of disasters if they were to hit. And we included power safety shutoffs in that. And so you can see from the results here, we received over 500 responses, or about 500 responses, once we ran it at the actual event physically, and then we also ran it an additional 2 weeks online. So we had representation from folks with mental health disabilities, the deaf community, blind, intellectual and developmental disabilities, other sensory, mobility, and chronic health conditions. We asked folks, you know, are you ready for a disaster? And 35% of all told us no, which was the maximum. And then when we asked individuals, you know, if a disaster were to occur, what would you need if the power went out? You can see that we received a lot of different feedback. 113 people said they would need accessible, reliable transportation. They would need backup generators or batteries, disaster preparedness kits, a place to stay, temporary housing, someone to check in on them, food, a landline phone, a cell phone, other, and first aid kits. So they were slightly different than the disaster prep kits. Sorry, the chat box is in my way. And then we asked, you know, how many of you that are taking this survey actually use assistive technology or durable medical equipment that requires electricity. And of all the folks we interviewed, 53% said they use some form of electrical AT or DME. And so that really gave us what we needed to know in terms of how we would pursue a potential pilot program in California, knowing that power safety shutoffs were going to be a part of our life for a number of years. But the other question we asked, which has really been quite interesting to hear from the community about, is how many of you that are on or that use electrical AT or DME are on the medical baseline program. And here in the graph, I'm sharing that 40% said yes, they were, 32% said no, they weren't, 21% didn't know, and 6% just were not sure or did not answer the question at all. I think that's really important to point out because as we've moved forward, it's become one of our deliverables in our grant this year, our contract. And I can tell you that over the last couple of months, the number of people that I have talked to about the medical baseline program are very much confused with the differences between that program and the CARES program. The medical baseline program is not about your income level. So the three major owner invested utilities, which are PG&E, Southern California Edison, and Sempra, which covers San Diego Gas and Lights. Their criteria for the medical baseline program is very similar, and that is not, it is not based on financial requirements. So although folks like myself who use durable medical equipment and AT qualify for the medical baseline program that gives us a 10% discount on our bill because we use more electricity than the typical person to keep our AT and DME charged up, it is not income-based. The CARES program that the utilities offer is income-based, and that provides a 20% discount. I think it's also important to note for folks on this call that you can be eligible for both. It's not about selecting one or the other. Next slide. So here's the launch of our program. For those of you who haven't seen the press release from us and PG&E or haven't gotten our emails, our new website, disabilitydisasteraccess.org, went live a couple weeks ago, and we have been receiving applications from folks across the state that have said that they will need support or assistance during public safety power shutoff. So I want to just definitely make sure everybody understands that this is a pilot program. Prior to us going into this work, we did a lot of research on a variety of fronts, and one of them was, does anything similar to what we're trying to do in California relate to other states? And while there was some similarities here and there was nothing statewide anywhere else in the nation that has been done to make sure that people with disabilities and older adults who use AT and DME are safe and well during power safety shutoff. So California is the first to take this on, and the pilot program is, you know, exactly what a pilot program is. It's a study and an opportunity for us to figure out what's going to work long term that maybe an entity, the government of some level, may determine that they want to fund and support long term. Our project is based on best practices and lessons learned, and fortunately we experienced some of that last year through the PSPSs that we worked through prior to having a contract to actually do the work. Next slide. So our research last year and the impacts really helped me figure out what our priorities would be in our contract and what we needed to really prioritize. So we developed relationships with battery vendors, and we did small scale, I would say, tests of AT and durable medical equipment with different batteries. And I think it's important to mention that we chose batteries over generators, and it's really important for people to know whether they're talking about a generator or a battery, because they can be very different things and have different capacity. Accessibility is also very different with a generator versus a battery. And you heard Anna mention that some folks that had generators ended up crashing their AT or DME because they weren't prepared to generate electricity from a generator that can be a much higher voltage than a battery when they turn their backup plan on. So through those test samples that we did, we got a lot of information back about how long a specific type of battery would work with a specific type of durable medical equipment or assistive technology. And I will say, again, it was a small sample. We tested some of the most generic AT and DME out there because we knew that that was what people were most often using. So we tested a variety of different sleep PAP machines and BiPAP machines with different batteries to see how long they would last, what kind of battery it was, what situation was it used in, to finally determine what batteries might actually work best for folks that use some of this equipment on a regular basis. So last year, during the PSPSs, word had gotten out that CFILC and the Independent Living Centers were going to be doing some sort of partnership. And as a result of that, even though we weren't in contract, we said that, yeah, we're absolutely ready to, do what we can to help out, because regardless of contract or not, independent living centers are a disability resource service center in the community that are often tapped for a variety of reasons. And funding, while it's very important, we do our best to try to make ends meet where we can. With that said, once we had put out our phone number to folks to let them know that resources and support might be available, we had received over 1,000 calls statewide in the areas that were going through a power shutoff. And so Anna had shared her specific statistics, but across the state, we had already been working to set up our contract. So we had purchased 250 batteries, and we had put all 250 batteries out to community members in PSPS areas. We had to do that very fast. It wasn't something that was planned out. I didn't write how it was going to be done. We just made it happen simply because it was the right thing to do, and we wanted to make sure people had what they needed to stay safe. In addition, we worked very quickly to get our centers access to debit cards so that they wouldn't have to, use money that they may not have quick access to put folks in hotel rooms. One of the lessons learned there was that folks didn't expect to be in hotels for a number of days, especially over 2 or 3, and realized that in the future they would like to have a plan to be more able to stay in their own homes, because maybe they didn't bring enough medication with them, or maybe they didn't realize sleeping on a hotel bed wasn't going to be the same in terms of controlling pressure sores or whatever the situation might have been. Didn't pack enough clothes. And then we provided over 250 meals to folks in the PSPS affected areas, either through restaurant or grocery gift cards that were distributed to folks that were either in their own homes with batteries but lost their food because it spoiled, as well as those that were put up in the hotels. And then we assisted over 40 individuals with either accessible transportation, or if they had transportation on their own, gas to go to and from. And I just want to point out that while this helped us learn a ton and really develop our pilot as we move forward in 2020, we certainly did not expect that we would also have a wildfire break out in a PSPS area. So while we thought we were going to be doing the best we could in every area, we did as best we could, but we also didn't intend that one center would absolutely close down completely because they were hit by a wildfire. Next slide. So what I think is really important is to stress every individual situation is unique and different. And while we have an application process now that every center involved in this project is going to be using, last year really taught us that every situation is different. And so we didn't want to make eligibility based on income, and we didn't want to make eligibility based on whether somebody was on the medical baseline program, and we didn't want to make eligibility based on somebody being on public benefits. We saw such diverse situations last year that we realized we could set up a application assessment basically that gets us what we need broadly across the state, but it's going to be the local center that has to figure out, given the situation in the local community and the individual's situation, what's going to work best for them. And what I've continued to stress to everybody is that, number one, we are not doctors and we are not first responders, and our program is simply a Band-Aid. And while we hope that we have something long-term and we're learning as we go, there are systemic issues and things that need to be changed far beyond just the actual services that are being provided. And that's, again, where your leadership and the collaboration between people with disabilities and OES and EMS folks coming together at all the different levels is going to be key in disaster planning in the future. And what will, a PSPS look like in a COVID-19 environment? I can tell you that it's being discussed and thought about right now. But again, it's something we've not experienced, and we're going to try our best to make sure that it's, you know, thoughtful and done in a safe way. But I think that we're all concerned about what shelters would look like in the future with the social distancing. What would it look like for folks that need transportation and might have a variety of durable medical equipment that they need to take with them? I mean, there's just endless factors, but resources are limited and only reach so many individuals. And I can tell you that now that we've put up our application for resources, it's going to go quick. Batteries are not cheap, and while we worked out a deal to get them decreased in price, the batteries that we chose to go with as our primary run about $3,000 a piece. And so you can imagine $3,000 a piece, and we've already purchased 250, and we have another 280 on the way to California. That's a drop in the bucket considering the population. And what we found through all of our applications so far is that by far the majority of folks that definitely use AT and DME that requires electricity do not know that they're either eligible for the medical baseline program or have never heard about it. So we've had the far majority of our applicants tell us that they're not on the medical baseline program. And one of the other pieces that's going to be really critical to our program is that aside from getting folks hooked up into the medical baseline program when they're qualified, that we are also setting people up to be successful long-term and helping them create their own individualized emergency prep plan. And so we're all looking at different formats and different plans that can be provided to folks and different scenarios that should be taken into effect or into account. But again, I want to just point out that every community is different. So if you're in a community that's prone to fires, you might be planning for one thing. If you're in a community that's prone to fires and floods, you might be preparing for something else. Next slide. So I want to just touch on, and I know my time is very much up. We are prioritizing the tier 3 areas of California first and the tier 2 areas second. And some of you might be wondering, what does that mean? There's going to be a map on the next slide and a link to where the map is on the California Public Utilities website. We are looking at the areas that are going to be most likely impacted or could be impacted by a wildfire, and therefore the power would be shut off in those particular areas. So folks that are submitting applications for resources right now, you know, again, I don't expect that we're going to be able to help everybody who applies, but we will do our hardest to meet the needs as much as we can. But we have to prioritize those that are in a extreme area of danger and then a medium area of danger. So the program will have statewide, does have uniformed consistency, but has local expertise attached to it. And again, we will be helping people enroll into the medical baseline program, assisting them with their long-term plans, and then providing training and public awareness as we go. Of course, that is significantly shifted in a COVID environment too. So rather than doing a lot of stuff in person, we plan on also doing it online in formats like this. Next slide. Here's the map that I was referring to. I listed out the tier 3 counties purposely. So if you're looking at the map, the reddish pink areas are what are considered the extreme areas. And then the orangish yellow are the elevated, what I refer to as the medium level areas of the state. Where I've listed each county to the right of it is the extreme counties. I did not list the second most priority counties. And again, you can get that map from the CPUC website link right there on the slide. Next slide. So all counties are covered by the pilot except for San Diego and Imperial counties. 20 of the independent living centers are engaged as partners in this work. And we have the expectation that we will be partnering with many of you who are on this webinar, both locally and regionally. and of course with other disability organizations that serve people that use electric AT and DME. Next slide. Again, this is a small scale preliminary program and study, and we're going to learn a lot from it, but we have no roadmap, and we're going to be documenting a lot of what we learn through both data, but also through case studies and narratives on a monthly basis, so that we, in the end, hopefully have a very helpful and useful report for government and policymakers to determine what a long-term program may look like. The PSPSs in California are not going away anytime soon, and the expectation is that while the utilities work to create better microgrids and uniformity that prevents wildfires from occurring in the future, we're going to be in the world of PSPSs for a number of years until that is completed. Next slide. All right, I know that I am out of time, but I do want to just say again that if you need our website, the disabilitydisaster-access.org link for any additional information, we will put this PowerPoint up there as well, and we will have a link to the Pacific ADA archive that they post tomorrow. I'm available to answer any questions. There's an email address at the end that you can email me at. You're also welcome to catch me by phone or in social media. Just know that a lot of my time right now is being prioritized on this program, as well as some of our other COVID-19 priorities. And I see that someone asked me why San Diego and Imperial was not included. So that power company, Sempra, has not been a part of some of the statewide discussions, and Southern California Edison and Pacific Gas and Electricity, they reached out to us. We are working with both of those utilities. In Southern California, our independent living centers down there received funding directly from Southern California Edison, but we are all coordinating in the South. And then in the North, the funding comes through California for PG&E and then goes out to the centers through that mechanism. Sempra, because I think they cover only those 2 counties and are so small, they didn't approach us on this. And frankly, we don't have the center from those areas involved in our membership, so it makes sense for them directly to collaborate with the independent living center in their area. Next slide. All right, so how it works, you apply for resources if you need PSPS specific resources through our website, or you can go through your local independent living center to fill out an application. It's then determined, assessed on an individualized basis, and then we make sure that you're supported in enrolling in the medical baseline program if you weren't already, and then setting up your personalized disaster plan, and then determining what PSPS resource strategies might work best to keep you safe and well. Next slide. All right. Ooh, I talk fast, but I'm 2 minutes over, so I just want to thank you again, Louis and Gabriel, for giving me that extra 3 minutes now.
All right, thanks so much, everyone. And so you have the contact information for Christina if you'd like. I know there's some questions that came up there that we weren't able to address, but in respect for your time, we're gonna end here. So you can contact her if you have a question on an ADA level about anything that's been said. You can contact your regional ADA center at 1-800-949-4232. Don't forget the email that you're going to get with the link to an online session evaluation. Please complete that for today's program. We value your input. Today's session was recorded. It will be available for viewing next week at adapresentations.org in the archive section of emergency preparedness. In our next webinar on June 11th, we're going to be joined by the Disability Access Manager and ADA Coordinator for the County of Marin for a presentation on integrating access and functional needs coordinator role into the Emergency Operations Center. And so we hope you can join us for that. Thank you very much, Christina, and to the no longer here Anna for a great presentation. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for attending today's session. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.